At Christmas dinner, my daughter-in-law handed me a badge. It read, "Housekeeper." Her parents roared with laughter. My son smirked. "Dinner is for family only," he said. "There wasn't even a chair for me at the table." I silently took off my wedding ring, placed it on the table, and said 4 words. A heavy silence hung in the room. But before we continue, let me tell you who I am. My name is Alara Vance. I am 70 years old, and in that moment I realized that the people for whom I had spent 42 years building a life had decided there was no longer a place for me at their table. Let me tell you what happened next. I was standing in the dining room of their massive house in a gated community in wealthy Lake Forest, just outside of Chicago. The ceilings were high, the chandelier sparkled, and the Christmas tree looked like it belonged in a magazine. Every ornament matched perfectly, not a single handmade craft in sight. I looked at the table, 10 place settings, 9 chairs. The crystal shone in the warm light. The linen napkins were folded into intricate shapes. By the entrance hung a seating chart on thick cream-colored cardstock. Names were written in gold calligraphy. My name was at the very bottom, under a separate heading, Staff. My daughter-in-law, Tiffany, pinned this badge to my sweater herself, in front of 20 people. Her smile was wide, her voice a half-tone louder than necessary. "This is just so the servers don't get confused," she announced cheerfully. "We wouldn't want them mixing up family and the help." Her parents laughed, the cousins giggled. Even a couple of the grandkids chuckled. They didn't fully understand, but they knew where the adults found humor. After I had raised 2 children and built a business from scratch alongside my husband, I stood there with a tray in my hands while my daughter-in-law publicly categorized me as service. My son Marcus sat near the head of the table. He glanced at the badge, at the tray in my hands, at the long table laden with silver and crystal, and he smirked. He didn't smile, he smirked. "Ma, don't make that face," he said, reaching past me for the carving knife. "Dinner is for family only, you know that." I looked at my husband, Otis. He sat next to Tiffany's father, adjusted his tie, lowered his eyes to his plate, and didn't say a word. The room carried on with its life, the hum of conversation, someone pouring more wine. Tiffany's mother raised a glass and said something about their first Christmas in this wonderful home. A few people supported the toast, clinking glasses. I placed the tray on the buffet. My hands didn't shake. Over 7 decades of life and 4 decades of carrying this family on my shoulders, my hands had learned to stay steady, even when everything inside me wanted to shatter into pieces. I touched the ring finger of my left hand. The band had sat there for so many years that it had worn a groove into my skin. Otis had bought it at a small pawn shop when we were living in a rented 2-room apartment above his brother's garage. The stone was modest, the setting simple. Over years of dishwater, laundry, signed loan agreements, and our shared life, the metal at the bottom had thinned like foil. I took off the ring. First I twisted it gently, then pulled it into my palm. No one even noticed. Everyone was too busy listening to Tiffany's father tell another story about a golf tournament at their country club. But I noticed how unexpectedly light my hand felt, how the small stone caught the candlelight one last time. Right now, as I tell you this, it is the holiday season. I wonder, where are you? Are you at your own table among people who truly see you? Or are you, like I was then, catching your breath somewhere on the sidelines because the celebration has suddenly become too heavy? Maybe you are in the kitchen listening to me on your phone while everyone else laughs in the next room. Maybe you're sitting in your car in the driveway, just hiding from the festivities for a few minutes. Whatever your situation, I am glad you are with me. Because what I did next shocked everyone at that table, and maybe it will surprise you. I stepped forward into that empty gap at the table where my chair should have been, right next to Marcus, and I placed the ring on the white tablecloth directly in front of his plate. The sound was almost inaudible, a light click of metal against china. But in that second, it cut through the hum of conversation like a knife. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Glasses paused in the air. Someone's laughter cut off mid-sentence. Marcus stared first at the ring, then at me. "Ma, what are you doing?" He exhaled. I looked at him, at the boy I used to carry on my hip while moving boxes of inventory in our hardware store, at the teenager who said that someday he would run the family business, at the man who had just told me in front of 20 people that dinner was for family and implying that I didn't belong to it. Then I looked at Otis. His eyes were no longer lowered. They were wide, bewildered, as if he couldn't grasp what was happening. I took a slow breath, kept my voice even and calm, and spoke the 4 words that changed everything. "You just lost everything." The room went deaf. Tiffany was the first to recover. She gave a nervous laugh, but it rang false. "Oh, Lara, come on, don't be dramatic. It's just a joke." "You are part of the family, of course, right?" I asked quietly. No one answered. I unpinned the badge, carefully removed it from my sweater with my fingers, and placed it next to the ring on that perfect white tablecloth between the silver cutlery and crystal glasses. "I won't be staying for dinner," I said. "Merry Christmas." And I turned around. I walked past the tree, where all the ornaments were strictly color-coordinated with the napkins, past the staircase wrapped in fresh pine garland, past the cousins reaching for their phones, and the adults with frozen faces. No one tried to stop me. Not my son, not my husband. Not a single person in that room stood up or called me by my name. The front door was heavy, with a trendy, oversized matte metal handle. It closed behind me with a dull thud, and that sound was like a period at the end of a book. The cold winter air hit my face. I stood outside. Lights shone on fences and roofs all around. The gated community shimmered with decorations, perfect houses, perfect lawns, a perfect life on display. I walked to my car, an old Buick, squeezed between massive crossovers and expensive SUVs like a stranger. I opened it, sat in the driver's seat, and put the keys on my lap. My phone came to life in my purse. Marcus flashed on the screen. I watched his name blink until the call disconnected itself. Then I started the engine, slowly drove out of the driveway, and rolled down the street. In the rearview mirror, I saw their house. Big windows, the lit-up living room, tiny figures of people around a long table. The Christmas dinner continued without me. And for the first time in many years, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in a long time: freedom. The streets were empty, save for the holiday lights on every house. I drove through the neighborhood slowly, carefully, just like any other day. The phone kept vibrating on the seat. Names flashed alternately. Marcus, then Otis, then Marcus again. I watched the screen light up and go dark, light up and go dark, until finally I reached over and flipped the phone face down. The gate at the exit opened automatically as I approached. No one came out. No one asked why I was leaving alone. I drove through, and behind me, the community closed off with the soft hum of mechanics. Outside that paradise, the world looked different. Ordinary apartment buildings, regular houses with rusty gates, simpler cars and driveways. On some lawns stood plastic reindeer and inflatable Santas, lights that didn't burn with an even, warm white glow, but blinked in multiple colors, just like in my childhood. Something inside me let go. About 20 minutes later, I caught myself slowing down near a neighborhood I hadn't visited in years. Narrow streets, small houses, old fences. This was where Otis and I had started. Young, broke, with a pile of plans and not a dime in our pockets. I stopped at an intersection and put the car in park. Across the street, a family minivan pulled up. A young couple in their 30s was unloading bags. 2 children were jumping around them. The door of the house swung open. An older couple came out onto the porch. Grandparents, you could tell immediately. The grandmother opened her arms wide. The children rushed to her with squeals. The grandfather shook the son-in-law's hand and then pulled him into a hug. The grandmother kissed her daughter on the cheek and took one child by the hand. All 4 went into the house. The door closed. Warm, yellow light poured out from under the curtains. I sat in the car and stared at that closed door longer than I should have. Then I shifted gears and drove on. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove forward until I saw a glowing red and white sign for a cheap motel off the highway, the kind where they charge by the night and ask no questions. The parking lot was half empty. In the lobby window stood a plastic Christmas tree blinking with tired lights. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I entered. She silently handed me a key and named a room number. I paid in cash. The room smelled of old carpet and cheap cleaner. 2 beds with floral spreads that looked like they had been there since the 90s. A television bolted to the dresser. In the bathroom, a fan rattled like an old tractor the moment I turned on the light. I put my bag on the bed and sat next to it. The phone came to life again. I took it out, looked at the screen. 15 missed calls, a dozen messages. I didn't open the texts, just scanned the names. Marcus, Otis, Tiffany, Keisha, my daughter, asking if I was okay and where I was. I turned the phone off completely and put it on the nightstand. The room went quiet. Cars whooshed by on the highway outside. Somewhere down the hall, someone was watching TV too loudly. But here, in this small, imperfect room, there was only me and the sound of my own breathing. I lay down on top of the bedspread without taking off my coat and stared at the ceiling. That damn badge kept floating before my eyes. Tiffany's smile when she pinned it on, her parents' laughter, Marcus's smirk, his words, "Dinner is for family only." But it wasn't just about this evening. I lay on the hard bed in that stupid motel and remembered the weeks leading up to Christmas. How Tiffany had shoved a list of chores for her perfect holiday into my hands, not as a mother-in-law, but as a housekeeper. Pick up the dry cleaning, polish the silver, check the guest bathroom to make sure there are decent towels, go get the groceries on the list, decorate the tree, only please without those. And with a light gesture, she pushed aside the old ornaments I had once bought for our own children. The list hung on the refrigerator. Thick check marks noted the items I had already done. Most of the check marks were by my hand. Marcus was on calls during this time. He had clients. Tiffany was either very tired or busy with important things. I silently hauled bags, scrubbed, ironed, and told myself, "Well, Grandma, you're helping the young ones. That's how it should be. Family." But there was one phrase that was stuck in my head like a splinter. I remembered the day I accidentally overheard Tiffany. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. She was talking on the phone with her mother, pacing back and forth in the living room. "Honestly, it's actually convenient that she lives with us," Tiffany said cheerfully. "It's like having live-in help, but for free." I froze with the knife in my hand. No, she does everything herself," Tiffany continued. "She likes to help. Cooks the food, watches the baby, looks after the house. We didn't even hire a nanny. Can you imagine the savings? Like live-in help, but free." In the motel room, I heard that phrase as clearly as I had from the next room. I thought about the store, the business Otis and I had built from nothing, about the papers I had found a month ago in his dresser, in the bottom drawer under his socks. Official documents, typed pages, stamps, signatures. Management rights to our hardware store were being transferred to Marcus, the authority to hire, fire, manage accounts, sign contracts, directors' powers. Otis had signed it all 2 weeks ago. My signature wasn't there. There had been no conversation about it beforehand. I had sat on the edge of the bed with those papers on my lap, staring at them until something crunched in my chest. Our store, our loans, our sleepless nights, my signatures on the contracts when the banks looked sideways at Otis and saw him as a risk, but looked at me a little softer. And here was Otis, quietly signing over power to his son, not even deeming it necessary to ask the wife he had lived with for over 40 years. I thought about the house, the one that cost us all our savings, the one in the gated community where I couldn't find a chair at the table, the house that was legally registered to me, where dinner is for family only. I suddenly caught myself asking, how long has this been going on? How long have they been pushing me aside? How many small moments had I swallowed, making excuses? He's tired, he's stressed, he didn't think, he's joking. Well, young people are like that these days. How many times had I pretended not to notice being erased from conversations, decisions, plans, From photographs, eventually? How long had I been invisible in my own life? The clock on the nightstand glowed with red numbers, almost midnight. Back in their perfect house, they were probably still sitting at the table. Maybe they had reached dessert and champagne. Maybe they were already laughing about something else, maybe recounting to each other how theatrical I was. Or maybe right now they were running through the rooms, nervous, calling everyone, coming up with theories about where I had gone. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow, I will decide what to do next. But one thing was clear, even that night in the small bleach-smelling motel under the sound of cars outside. I wasn't going back to how things were. I wasn't going back to the role of a person who can be treated like a servant with impunity. I woke up on the same bed, in the same position, in the coat I had lain down in. Through the thin, crooked curtains, a murky morning light was breaking through. My neck was stiff, my lips dry, the taste of cheap powdered coffee from the lobby still in my mouth. For a few seconds I didn't understand where I was or what had happened. Then memory flooded back. The badge, the ring, my departure. I sat up slowly, looked around. The same floral bedspreads, the same old TV, the same rattling fan in the bathroom that roared as soon as I turned on the light. The phone lay on the nightstand, turned off. I didn't touch it. I went into the tiny bathroom, turned the tap to cold, washed my face, and stared at my reflection in the dim mirror under the harsh fluorescent light for a long time. 70 years old. Gray hair, long overdue for the hairdresser. Wrinkles around the eyes, dots across the whole face. Each one about some night at the store, about every worry of how will we make it, about every month-end closing when the numbers didn't add up. I thought about the woman who stood up from the table yesterday and walked out of the house, leaving her ring on the white tablecloth. About the one looking at herself in the cloudy mirror now. And I remembered the girl I was before all of this. I grew up on the south side of Chicago, in a neighborhood where cars didn't usually stop. They drove through and forgot. One main avenue, one 24-hour diner because the owner lived right above it, one small store, one gas station. My mama worked as a waitress in that diner until her legs stopped listening to her. I was 16 then. She would come back late at night smelling of fried potatoes, cheap oil, and strong black coffee, kick off her shoes, sit on a stool, and soak her feet in a basin of warm water. I would be doing homework at the kitchen table. My daddy was a truck driver, worked for a company that paid by the mile, not the hour. He was gone most of the week. Sundays, if we were lucky, he'd be home, bringing some small thing, a chocolate bar, a magnet, an extra loaf of bread. We lived that life where half a pound of ground beef had to make 6 dinners, where you smoothed out aluminum foil with an iron to use it again, where T-shirts were worn until they fell apart at the seams and then cut into rags for cleaning. But we didn't consider ourselves unhappy. My parents were proud that they paid their bills on time, cheated no one, and begged from no one. They taught me that dignity isn't in the size of your wallet, but in how you hold your head and keep your word. Otis Vance appeared in my life when I was 23. I was sitting behind the register at a pharmacy. Boring, monotonous work. He came in to buy painkillers and lingered at the counter for 20 minutes. He was 25. He worked at a hardware store downtown. He was full of ideas about how things could be done better if only someone would give him a chance. He spoke passionately, waving his hands. I listened and suddenly caught myself starting to believe it too. A year later, we got married. No destination weddings, no floor-length couture gowns or restaurants. A quick trip to City Hall, then a modest table in the local community center, plastic chairs, borrowed flowers. No honeymoon. We moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment above his brother's garage. The apartment was cold, the windows drafted, the pipes banged, but it was ours. Otis kept dreaming of his own store, about how he would do everything differently. Honest goods, real advice for people, no deception. I listened, and the more I listened, the more seriously I took his words. We saved every dollar. I took a side job with a private accountant, helping sort papers during tax season. Otis took any overtime he could get. We ate beans and rice more often than I care to remember. After a couple of years, we had enough for a down payment on a narrow, old storefront on a busy street. The building was dilapidated, the floors creaked and shifted. In the back room, the roof leaked during heavy rain. We set out buckets and basins. But the rent was manageable. The location had foot traffic. We named it simply Vance Hardware and Supply. I painted the sign myself, standing on a stepladder under the July sun. I traced the letters with a ruler so they wouldn't be crooked. Otis coached from below. Right, left, the letters slipping. The first 10 years were the hardest. Otis stood on the floor, talking to customers, showing them what was best to buy, getting to know contractors and weekend warriors. I sat in a small room behind the stockroom with a calculator and ledgers, watching every penny, learning to read contracts and not fear banks, calling suppliers and begging for payment extensions when revenue fell short. When Keisha was born, I was 27. I took just a week at home and went back to the store. At first, she slept in a carrier by the counter, and I would rock her with my foot between customers. Then I wore her on my chest in a sling. The baby slept while I sorted inventory and counted invoices. Marcus was born 3 years later. By that time, we had already refinanced the store twice to survive the slow seasons, when no one was renovating or building. Once we even leveraged my small life insurance policy. The bank wouldn't give a loan otherwise. I felt firsthand what bankers could be like. Some explained calmly, looking me in the eye. Others spoke exclusively to the man, as if I weren't in the room. But we pulled through. The store grew not in leaps but carefully, step by step. We added a small yard for lumber. Then, when Marcus was in elementary school, we opened a second location in a neighboring suburb. By the time my son entered high school, our small shop had turned into one of the few independent hardware businesses that the big box chains hadn't crushed. People knew us by name, knew we wouldn't cheat them, that we'd give solid advice and wouldn't upsell. We did it, Otis and I, together. I remember one evening. Marcus was about 15. We were closing the store, counting the till. I was clicking the buttons on the old register. He was sitting on the counter, swinging his legs like a child. "Someday, this will all be mine," he said suddenly, looking around the floor, the shelves, the lights, the people still wandering the aisles. I looked up from the register. "Ours," I corrected. "If you want it. But you'll have to want the work, not just the result." He nodded, but I saw something strange in his eyes, distant. That look teenagers have when they talk about the future without really understanding what it's made of. "Of course, Ma." He waved it off. I realize now I should have looked closer at that "of course," at how easily he pronounced those words. I should have understood sooner the difference between "I want to receive" and "I am ready to build." But back then, I still believed that if you gave a lot, worked hard, and stayed close, people would automatically see your value. That family is something self-evident, reliable. Sitting that morning in the motel, looking at myself in that cloudy mirror, I finally admitted to myself what had been brewing for a long time. It doesn't matter how much you built and how much of yourself you put into it, if the people for whom you built it don't respect the builder. And I was no longer going to be invisible in the house I helped stand up. By that morning in the motel, I already knew I wasn't going back to a house where I had been made invisible, which meant I had to look honestly at how we got here. Marcus finished college with a degree in business management and a complete lack of interest in our store. He was 22 when he first said plainly that the shop wasn't for him. We were standing in the yard behind the store amidst lumber and bags of concrete mix. I was closing out the register, pulling cash from the drawer, sorting receipts. "I want to do something else," he said, sitting on a pallet, swinging his legs. "Something, well, more serious, bigger than your store." Otis lowered his eyes for a second. I saw his face flinch, but then he quickly plastered on his usual smile. "What exactly?" I asked. Marcus shrugged. "Consulting, strategy, helping businesses grow. The store's fine, but it's small, you know. I want to think bigger." I didn't argue. Keisha had already moved to Philly by then, working as a nurse, married to a man whose last name I still respect. She called every week, sent photos of the kids, visited when she could. She had her own life, her own family. I wanted my son's life to work out too. Otis and I helped Marcus rent a workspace in a trendy co-working building in downtown Chicago, in a glass tower where everything shines and everyone walks with laptops under their arms. He called it a consulting firm. I never quite understood who exactly he was consulting or about what. At family dinners, he talked about clients, presentations, growth strategies, sprinkling in buzzwords. When asked specifically, "And what did you do?" he answered in a way that said a lot without really saying anything. Otis listened, glowing with pride. "Our son is downtown, in an office, in a suit," he would repeat, "not in the dust with lumber, but in business." I nodded and stayed silent, though a question stirred inside me all the time. In what business exactly? That was when he met Tiffany. She worked in the same business center, doing marketing for her parents' company. They owned a chain of car dealerships across Illinois, showrooms where cars stood in 2 rows behind glass facades, espresso for clients, everything beautiful. A family that played golf, vacationed not at a cabin but at a villa by a lake, and was used to their word being law. Tiffany dressed in a way that even in jeans, it was clear the clothes were expensive. She spoke with a confidence as if she had never doubted a single decision in her life. Marcus brought her to meet us at our first store. It was Sunday. We had just finished inventory. The air smelled of wooden pallets, metal, and paint. I stood behind the counter in old jeans and a t-shirt. My hair was in a bun, my hands dusty from boxes. Otis was outside helping a regular customer load drywall into a truck. Tiffany walked in wearing white trousers and heels that clicked loudly on our scratched linoleum. She looked around. Walls of pegboard, narrow aisles, shelves we had bought as we grew, mismatched in color and height. She smiled. "So, this is it," she said, more to Marcus than to me. "Your family business?" "Here it is," I answered, coming around the counter, extending a hand. "Almost 30 years here." "How cute." Her smile remained flawless. "A cozy place. Has character." The way she said character didn't sound like a compliment, but like saying, "Old wallpaper, quite amusing." Marcus dragged her around the floor, showing off departments as if he worked there every day, rather than running in haphazardly on holidays. Tiffany nodded politely, asked questions, but the moment she thought we weren't looking, she dropped her eyes to her phone. When they left, Otis came back in from the street, wiping his hands on a rag. "Nice girl," he said. "Polite, pretty." "Pretty," I agreed. But inside, something was scratching at me. 6 months later, they announced their engagement. The wedding was the following spring at a country club I had only seen from a distance, driving down the highway. Columns at the entrance, perfect lawn, paths where it seemed no one ever walked in dirty shoes. Tiffany's parents paid for almost everything, but Otis didn't lag behind, writing checks for amounts he didn't tell me about. I saw later in the statements, flowers, photographer, rehearsal dinner, prices that rivaled our old mortgage payments. At the ceremony itself, their side filled almost the entire hall. Business partners of her father, her mother's friends from the book club, relatives from all over. Our side was more modest. A few employees from the store, Otis's brother and his family, a couple of old friends. During the reception, I stood near the dessert table, a plate of cake in my hands. My appetite had long vanished. Tiffany was talking to a cousin, laughing, leaning in slightly. I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose. I was just standing nearby. "Marcus's family is sweet," she said liltingly. "Such hard workers, very simple, very grounded. His mom still stands behind the counter in their little shop. Can you imagine? I keep telling him, we need to retire them already, or they'll live there forever. But it seems they like the drudgery." They laughed, the cousin, then Tiffany herself. I looked at my plate and realized I couldn't eat. That night in the hotel room, I carefully mentioned it to Otis. "Tiffany said one thing," I began. He was already untying his tie, tired, happy. "She's young." He waved it off, not even listening. "Don't nitpick words, Alara." "She called our store little," I said, "and she said it like it was something shameful." Well, it is little, Otis answered calmly. Compared to what her family has, there's nothing wrong with that, just different levels. It didn't hurt him, but over the next year, I saw him start to measure us by their standards more and more. He began talking about expansion, franchises, an exit strategy, about how we should sell the chain to a conglomerate while we were on top and cash out. Tiffany's father says independent stores won't survive soon, he reasoned at dinner. We need to think about an exit strategy. We aren't exiting anywhere, I reminded him. This is our life. It's business, Otis answered. Business changes. Gradually, Tiffany began rewriting our family history to suit herself. At parties with their friends, I heard her recount without stumbling how Marcus would soon fully take over the family business, as if he were already sitting in our office deciding everything. She talked about our scaling plans, about modernizing the format, about partnerships with major suppliers. All of this sounded confident, beautiful, and had little in common with what Otis and I actually discussed. Marcus stood nearby, nodding, not correcting her. He liked how it sounded. Otis didn't object either. He was dazzled by the new circle, the golf club, charity dinners, people in suits who nodded respectfully when he said his son was a consultant and the store was a family business with potential. I saw him changing, choosing clothes differently so as not to look too provincial, less willing to tell stories from the store, but happy to talk about trips with his father-in-law. He stopped asking my opinion on important decisions, asking instead what Tiffany's father thought. I stayed silent. I was taught from childhood. Don't rock the boat. Family stays together, I told myself. Well, he's in love. New in-laws, new environment, they'll adjust. I should have seen then how respect disappears, not in one big scandal, but in small concessions. One, okay, I won't argue at a time. But I continued to believe that if I just endured and did my part, everything would settle down. I was wrong. The phone call that truly shifted everything came on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was sitting in our small office behind the store, closing the day, transcribing numbers from the register to the ledger, when Marcus's name blinked on the screen. "Ma, can you and Pop come over for dinner on Saturday?" he asked. "We have something to talk to you about." "About what?" I asked, already hearing that specific softness in his voice with which he always led into requests. "It's good news," he answered. "We'll tell you when you get here." I hung up and looked at the stack of receipts, at my hands stained with ink, and internally I already knew good news for them almost always turned into a trial for me. On Saturday, we went to dinner at their Chicago apartment, a rental in a new building near the Loop. The apartment was decent, 2 bedrooms, a balcony. Tiffany had half-jokingly said more than once that it was temporary. We've already outgrown this. Dinner wasn't homemade. There were boxes from an expensive Italian restaurant on the table. Small portions, big plates. I saw the prices on the receipt in the trash. I flinched. We talked about nothing. The drive over, business at the store, how Tiffany was feeling. She was 4 months pregnant. Then Marcus pushed his plate away, glanced at Tiffany. She nodded slightly. "So," he began, folding his hands on the table, "we've been looking at a deal." "A deal?" Otis asked. "What kind of deal?" "A house," Tiffany inserted, already pulling out her phone. "In a gated community in Lake Forest. Excellent schools, security, neighbors are all top tier. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths. The master suite is bigger than this whole apartment." She swiped through several photos. Huge house, perfectly manicured lawn, kitchen like a picture, walk-in closet you could live in. "Beautiful," I said cautiously. "Probably costs half the city, though." "Well..." Marcus took a folded piece of paper from his pocket, placed it before us. "Here." On the paper was the mortgage amount. I compared it in my head to our house and realized it was about 3 times more, and the down payment would eat almost all our savings. "We can't handle this ourselves right now," Marcus spoke quickly. "My business is still ramping up. Tiffany will go on maternity leave." Tiffany leaned forward, her voice soft, confident. "We thought about a partnership. You buy the house as an investment, put it in your name. We'll pay you rent until we get on our feet and can take the mortgage ourselves. Then you sell it to us and everyone wins." "Meaning?" I asked. "The house is in your name, and we live there, paying you, sort of." "Yes," Marcus nodded. "You're not just helping us, you're making an investment. Real estate is safe, and we need space for the baby." "Can we think about it?" I asked. "Of course," Tiffany said hurriedly. "But the market is very hot right now. The seller wants an answer within a week, Max." The ride back was silent. Otis spoke first. "I think it's not a bad option." "It's a huge amount of money," I said. "We have it," he waved his hand. "And who did we save it for? We aren't eternal. We need to help the kids while we're alive. The house stays in the family anyway." "The down payment wipes us out to zero," I reminded him. "Alara," he sighed, "it's an opportunity. The child will grow up in good conditions. We know ourselves how a cheap rental squeezes you." That night I sat at our kitchen table. Papers, statements, notebook, calculator, spread it all out. Calculated, crossed out, calculated again. The money was tight. It left a thin cushion that would evaporate if we got sick, if the store had a downturn, if something went wrong. But this was our grandson, our son. In the morning I called Marcus. "We agree," I said, "but the deed is in my name only. Until you pay everything off, legally, it is my property." A pause hung on the other end. "Is that necessary?" he asked cautiously. "We're family. It's necessary," I answered. "You said yourself it's a business investment. In business, everything must be clean." He was silent for a few more seconds and surrendered. "Okay, if there's no other way." 6 weeks later, we sat in a lawyer's office downtown. I signed my name so many times my fingers cramped. Marcus and Tiffany were excited, happy, discussing what color the nursery would be, where to put the TV, what curtains to hang. Otis squeezed my shoulder. "You're doing the right thing," he whispered. "It's for ours." I wanted to believe him very much then. Another 3 months later, when the grandson was born, things spun further. Otis and I still lived in our old house. It was small but fully paid for, lived in. Every corner remembered how the kids ran down the hall, how I whispered over bills at night, and how Otis fixed the faucet for the 3rd time. Marcus called. "Ma," his voice tired. "Tiffany is completely worn out with the baby. The house is huge, so much to do. We have a whole guest suite on the 1st floor sitting empty." I was silent, listening. "Maybe you and Pop could move in with us temporarily," he continued. "You know, like it's trendy now, multi-generational living. You'd be close to the grandbaby, helping out, and you wouldn't have to drive back and forth." I heard that behind this trendy was a simple convenient for us. But there was real fatigue in my son's voice, and immediately the image of that little bundle, our grandson, rose before my eyes. "I'll think about it," I said. "I'll talk to your father." Otis swallowed the idea without hesitation. "Of course, let's go," he rejoiced. "Next to the grandson in a new house. What could be better? We're always on the road anyway." He was ready to hand over the keys to the old house tomorrow. And we sold our home, the one where I repainted walls, moved furniture, planted my first flower garden under the windows, packed 30 years of life into boxes, children's drawings, old photos, dishes I was saving for later. We moved into the guest suite of their big house in Lake Forest. The suite was nice. Its own bedroom, a small living room, separate bathroom, separate entrance from the yard. Tiffany kept repeating, "This is your space, so you feel free." It sounded beautiful, but in fact, it was a corner in a house considered theirs, even though on paper it was mine. At first it was even good. I held my grandson, tiny, warm, with funny wrinkles on his forehead, fed him bottles, changed diapers, walked with the stroller, cooked casseroles and soups so Tiffany would suffer less in the kitchen. Otis could sit in an armchair for hours, holding the baby on his chest, looking happier than ever. Then the requests started to change. First, Tiffany asked for small things. "Alara, since you're going to the store anyway, grab some groceries on the way." Can you throw in a load of laundry while I'm with the baby? I won't get to it. I told myself, well, Grandma's helping. That's how it should be. But gradually, help began to turn into do. Elara, cleaning upstairs is the hardest. Could you please check the bathrooms? The cleaning lady started charging too much, so we let her go. Elara, could you clear out that room? Make it a playroom? The baby's toys will be everywhere soon. Can you be home by 3? I have a salon appointment, and a nanny isn't in the budget. And why bother? You're home anyway. I cooked, scrubbed, barely put the ironing board away. I had more work than in our old house. And at some point, even without a conversation, without an official starting today, you are our housekeeper, I stopped being the grandmother who lives with us. I became the one who does. It happens unnoticed. First they ask you to pour water since you're up, then call someone from the room, then bring the phone, then make a sandwich, then another one. I want a different kind. I remember one scene especially clearly. Tiffany invited 3 friends for lunch on the terrace. It was warm. The table was set outside. Since morning, I had been shopping for her list. That specific coffee and those exact olives. And don't confuse the cheese brand. I was putting groceries in the fridge when I heard her laughter in the yard and the chatter of friends. Elara, her voice sounded from the open door. Bring the pitcher of iced tea, please, and those cookies from the cabinet. Not a request. An order masked as politeness. I brought the tea, brought the cookies, then approached a couple more times to refill glasses. One of the friends thanked me. The others didn't even turn their heads. As I was walking back to the kitchen, I heard Tiffany, not lowering her voice, say, "It's so convenient, honestly. Like staff, but family. She loves helping, does it all herself." The friends ooh-ed and ah-ed. "Oh, wish I had that. Pity my mom lives far away." I stopped at the kitchen table, leaned my palms on the edge, and just stood there for a while, staring at a single spot. Another day, Marcus caught me in the hallway. "Ma, can you help out?" He threw out while walking, not even looking up from his phone. "I need to pick up my suit from the dry cleaners, and I have back-to-back calls. You're going into town anyway?" "I'm going to the store," I said. "That's in the other direction." "Well, you'll go after." He waved it off easily. "They're open till 6. Not hard for you to make it. I really need that suit for tomorrow." I went. Of course I went. And the next time, he didn't even ask, just sent a text with the address of the dry cleaners and added, "Pick up? Thanks, you're the best." Meanwhile, at the store, things were changing too. Marcus started showing up there once or twice a week. Not to work, to be seen. He walked in wearing a suit, circled the floor, shook hands with regulars, patted employees on the shoulder in a friendly way, took selfies against the backdrop of shelves, and posted them online captioned, "Growing the family business, love our customers." I saw Lamar, our old employee who had been with us nearly 20 years, approach him, starting to explain a problem with the supplier, prices rising, quality dropping, need to decide who to keep working with. Marcus listened, nodded importantly. Yes, we'll need to look at that. I'll think about how to approach this strategically," he said, wrote nothing down, and walked on. An hour later, Lamar came to me. "Did Marcus tell you about the supplier?" he asked. "No," I answered. "What happened?" The two of us sorted through all the papers. I called the warehouse, then the supplier, haggled, secured a decent price and a different delivery schedule. That evening I mentioned it to Otis. "Marcus promised to think about it and forgot again," I said. "And it's the small things that keep the store running." Otis shrugged. "What do you expect? He has his own business, his own clients. He can't keep track of everything." "Those small things are the reason we survived at all," I replied. "He'll learn," Otis said. "We didn't know everything immediately either. The main thing is that he comes in, people see the young owner is on site." "He's playing owner, not working," I said quietly. "You're always tough on him," Otis sighed. "He's trying as best he can. He needs new ideas for the store, a fresh perspective." He didn't even ask about my ideas. I chose silence again. I told myself, when the baby grows up, When Tiffany calms down, when Marcus gets a taste for the work, everything will level out. I continued doing what I always did. Getting up early, going to the store, doing the books, and at home, washing, cooking, babysitting, adjusting to other people's schedules. Until one day, on a quiet Saturday morning, I stumbled upon that envelope. Otis had gone golfing with Tiffany's father. I was gathering clean laundry in our guest suite, folding t-shirts, making the bed. I opened his dresser to put away shirts and noticed the bottom drawer wasn't fully closed. I pushed it. It hit something inside. I pulled the drawer out completely. In the far corner, under a stack of socks, lay a folded, thick brown envelope. I almost slammed the drawer back shut, almost walked away, but the way it was hidden gave me no peace. I took the envelope in my hands, opened it. Inside were papers. Not letters, not cards. Legal documents, the kind I had been signing myself for 3 decades. Contracts, addendums, stamps, fine print. I recognized the format immediately. Partnership agreements, some redistribution of authority, new signatures. The further I read, the colder my fingers got. Management rights in our business were being transferred to Marcus. Officially, the right to sign contracts, make decisions on salaries, staff, supplies. Otis had already signed everything 2 weeks ago. My signature wasn't there. My name wasn't there either. I sat on the edge of the bed, put the papers on my lap, staring at them until the letters blurred. So, I had been officially pushed away from the business I built myself behind my back. A couple of hours later, I was still sitting in that position when the front door slammed. Otis returned from golf, whistling some tune. He walked into the room, stopped in the doorway, seeing me with the envelope. "What's that you have?" he asked, though his eyes showed he knew exactly what it was. I stood up, handed him the papers. "You tell me," I answered. He took them, scanned them, put them on the dresser. "Yeah, just formalities, Alara," he said. "Getting affairs in order." "Formalities?" I asked. "You transferred authority over the store to Marcus and didn't even inform me?" "I was going to." Marcus started unbuttoning his collar. "Just, the moment never seemed right." "The moment." I spoke slowly so my voice wouldn't break. "And when did you want to? When he's already redone everything however he pleases? Or never?" "Don't be dramatic," he grimaced. "It's time to give the son an opportunity. We aren't getting younger. He needs to learn to manage." "He isn't managing, Otis," I said. "He comes in twice a week, pretends he's the boss, and leaves. He makes no decisions. Lamar and Patrice and I make them." "He'll learn," he cut off. "We didn't understand everything from day one either." "We were in the store every day," I reminded him. "We risked, mortgaged everything we had, didn't sleep at night. Marcus doesn't do that." Otis sighed heavily, as if I were exhausting him. "You've always been too strict with him. He's trying in his own way. And anyway, this isn't about you right now, it's about him." "Seems to me it's exactly about me," I said. "About me being crossed out of the decision as if I'm excess." He was genuinely surprised. "No one crossed you out. You're still part of the business, always will be." "But not a partner," I answered. "Not a person to be consulted. Just convenient labor that handles everything while the men pretend to lead." He was silent. It was clear he didn't get it. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said finally. "I was trying to be a good father, give the son a chance. And the fact that in doing so you stopped being a husband, does that bother you?" I asked quietly. He looked away, said nothing. I walked out of the room and closed the door. He didn't follow me. After that conversation, everyone in the house became more cautious. Otis and I walked past each other like strangers in a hospital corridor. Polite, "Hi! How are you?" No depth. He went to the store or to golf. I went to the store and back, and at home into our corner, the guest suite. Marcus, if he noticed anything, didn't show it. Tiffany noticed. It was felt in her gaze, sharp, assessing. She was too smart not to understand something had cracked. She just didn't fully understand where exactly. 3 weeks after the envelope story, I was folding clean laundry at the end of the hallway on the second floor. I had washed sheets, taken them out of the dryer, stood over the table in the laundry room trying to master that eternal hell called how to fold a fitted sheet. The door to Marcus and Tiffany's bedroom was ajar. Tiffany's voice carried clearly. She was on the phone. I didn't intend to eavesdrop, but the sound traveled down the hallway like through a pipe. "No, I understand," she was saying, but awkwardly. "She's here constantly. When people come over, it's unclear if she's family or staff. Everyone gets confused." I froze, sheet in hand. "I mean, yes, useful," Tiffany continued. "Free nanny, free cleaning, it's super. But useful isn't the same as, well, loved, useful, not loved." The words hit so precisely, as if someone had struck my forehead. "We were actually looking at those elite-assisted living facilities in Florida," Tiffany said further. "You know, the ones with programs, pools, doctors. We'll present it as a gift. You worked so hard, you deserve a rest. All that spirit. She'll feel guilty if she refuses." Pause. Apparently the person on the other end asked something. "Yes, yes," Tiffany spoke again. "Plus, it'll be easier for Otis to persuade her. He's the boss with her. He'll explain it's in her interest." I felt my fingers grip the sheet until they turned white. "The business they have there is also awkwardly structured right now," she said. "On paper, Otis can't transfer everything to Marcus because Alara still holds half. And this house is laughable. It's still registered to her. We live here, but legally, it's her property." Another pause. Someone said something in response. "Exactly," agreed Tiffany. "That's why we do everything simultaneously. The facility as care for Mom, plus signing papers under the guise of getting things in order. Inheritance, taxes. She doesn't understand any of it. Otis will handle it. She'll sign what's needed. The house transfers to us. Store authority to Marcus. Everyone's happy. She's supervised in a nice place. We aren't villains. Everyone wins." I stopped breathing. "Well, yeah," Tiffany chuckled. "Marcus is nervous, of course. Thinks she won't agree, but she has no options. Where will she go? Retirement in a rental apartment? Funny. This way. Comfort, doctors, meals on schedule. What else does she need at her age?" Then, it seems, she was asked about our guest suite. "Leave her here?" Tiffany snorted. "No, that doesn't work for me. I need this floor when my parents visit. And anyway, it looks strange, as if we can't afford our own housing without help from relatives. Or as if a maid lives with us. No, it needs to look correct." I gently, almost on tiptoe, placed the sheet on the table. "She is, of course, useful," Tiffany continued. "But helping when you visit is different from living with us permanently. This is our life, our family. Her time has passed." I didn't listen further. I slowly turned around and went to our guest suite, closed the door behind me, and sat on the bed. They wanted to take everything. The house I bought, the business Otis and I built, the right to decide for myself. And they were going to wrap it in beautiful packaging, call it care, a gift, and a correct decision. Remove me far away so I wouldn't get underfoot and spoil their picture. I remembered my mother. She was 68 when she died in her apartment, in her own bed. Until the last day, she decided herself when to get up and what to cook. She would sooner have burned the house down than allowed someone to send her to an institution because it was more convenient for the children. I stood up, went to the closet. On the top shelf, behind winter coats, lay an old accordion folder, darkened with time. The rubber band holding it had long lost its elasticity. I took it down, put it on the bed, opened it. Everything we had done in our entire life was there. The first partnership documents for the store, business registration certificates, old loan agreements, the deed to the house, insurance policies, statements from savings accounts. I spread the papers on the bedspread. On the deed to the house, only my name. On the store registration papers, 2 signatures, Otis's and mine. But as the initiator and founder in the first versions, it was me. I filed. I ran through offices. In the mortgage contract for the house, my passport, my data, my credit score essentially pulled the deal through. In pension and savings accounts, everywhere it was Otis and me together. But there were important nuances in the fine print. Who is the beneficiary? Under what circumstances? What transfers to whom? I read all this not as a wife and mother, but as a person reclaiming the picture. What could they take? Only what I gave away myself. What could I take back? Everything that was formally mine anyway. I took my phone, one by one photographed all the documents, every page, every signature, every stamp. Then put the papers back in the folder, returned it to the shelf, closed the closet, sat at the small table by the window, opened my laptop. In the search bar I wrote, Real Estate and Family Business Lawyer, Chicago Recommendations. My eyes automatically caught a name I already knew. Mr. Sterling, our longtime lawyer. 20 years ago, he helped us open the second store, handled loans, drafted wills when the kids were small. I dialed his number. Mr. Sterling, this is Alara Vance, I said. I need to meet with you and look at some documents. He didn't pry, just answered, Come in tomorrow. I wasn't in a rage at that moment. There was no desire to throw dishes or make a scene. It wasn't hot anger. It was a cold, very clear sensation. Enough. Now you will deal not with a convenient woman who endures everything, but with a person who remembers how to read contracts and count numbers. They forgot who taught them what business, negotiations, and fine print are. I didn't. The next morning I waited until Marcus, Tiffany, and the grandson left for her parents for some pre-holiday lunch. Otis had already left for the store in the morning as usual. I looked out the window at the empty driveway, took my bag, keys, carefully closed the door behind me, and drove downtown to Mr. Sterling's office. His firm was not far from where we started. Old building, high ceilings, worn carpet in the hallway, smell of books and coffee. He met me at the door, shook my hand. Alara, how many years? Come in. We sat in a small conference room. A stack of folders already lay on the table. He had pulled our old files in advance. Tell me, he said, what happened? I told him everything about the house registered to me, about the guest suite where we lived as if doing us a favor, about the documents Otis signed in secret, transferring authority over the store to his son, about Tiffany's conversation in the bedroom, about the facility, about plans to do everything correctly, so I would just sign, not understanding what. Mr. Sterling listened carefully, not interrupting, only occasionally asking clarifying questions and making notes. With every word I said, his face became harder. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, took off his glasses, looked at me over the frames. Do you want my professional assessment or human? He asked. Both, I answered. Humanly, he said. Your family is behaving vilely, to put it mildly, and you have every right to protect yourself by any legal means. He put his glasses back on, opened one of the folders. And now legally, you have far more leverage than they think. He spread copies of our old contracts before me. The store, he began. According to documents, you and your husband are partners. But here it's important not only what is written, but how everything actually works. All these years you did the books, signed papers, communicated with banks and suppliers. If it goes to court, a judge will see you are the de facto manager. He set aside one folder, took another. The house, he said. Here everything is absolutely clear. The owner is you and only you. Marcus and Tiffany are essentially tenants, even if they don't think so. You can put the house up for sale tomorrow, and they will have no legal right to stop you. But Otis paid too, I objected out of inertia. Paid from joint funds, he nodded. But the title is registered to you. In reality, that is the key moment. He turned a few more pages. Pension and savings accounts, he murmured. Here it's more interesting. Formally, you both have access, but there are nuances. Who is the beneficiary? What happens in case of one spouse's death? What options do you have for changing these conditions? Given that Otis's blood pressure has been jumping lately and he's on pills, it's better to attend to this in advance. I remembered his pills, the blood pressure monitor he kept on the nightstand, his shortness of breath on the stairs. "What can I do?" I asked. "The question isn't what you can do," he answered. "The question is, what do you want?" I thought for a couple of seconds. "I want to take back control over what belongs to me," I said. "I want the house and my part of the business protected so no one can, by slipping a paper, deprive me of a voice. And I want to decide myself where to live and how to spend what Otis and I earned." "Then we do this," he nodded. "We put everything in your name through a trust." We spent the next 3 hours over papers. Mr. Sterling drafted documents to create a trust in my name. The house into the trust, my share of the business there too, my personal savings and deposit accounts as well. "In the end," he explained, "all this will be under your sole control. No one, husband, children, grandchildren, will be able to sign something for you or make a decision without your consent." "And what to do with the store?" I asked. "I don't want it to go to Marcus. He hasn't earned it." Mr. Sterling smirked. "I've been wondering," he said. "Why haven't you sold it yet to those who actually run it? Lamar, Patrice?" "They won't manage the price." I shook my head. "If we give them an installment plan and a good discount," he answered, "they'll manage. You will receive payments from them as additional income. The store will remain in the hands of people who love it, and Marcus will get the opportunity to finally learn to live on what he earns himself." I felt something shift inside, as if a door opened. "I like this idea," I said. We sketched out the conditions. Sale of my share of the store to Lamar, Patrice, and 2 other old employees. Payment in parts, manageable but fair, without predatory interest, without bondage. "The house," he reminded. "How do you want to handle it?" "Sell," I answered without hesitating. "After the holidays, put it on the market. Find myself smaller housing, simpler, but mine." "They will resist," he warned. "Let them," I said. "It's my house." We signed a stack of papers. Mr. Sterling gave me recommendations on accounts, transfer part to another bank where Otis has no access, recheck beneficiaries on savings. When I walked out of his office, the sun was already setting. Wintry, low, orange. The phone in my purse had been vibrating the whole time. I took it out, looked at the screen. A text from Tiffany. "Don't forget, please, to buy normal silver polish, the one in the green tube. Don't get the cheap stuff. And that coffee I like, not that stuff you always buy. What time will you be home? Need help with dinner, I'm not managing." I looked at these lines, and I wanted to laugh. Just a week ago, I would have driven to the shops, rushed home so dinner would be on time. I put the phone back in my purse, answering none of the messages. On the way to the motel, I stopped at a roadside diner, ordered a regular combo meal, sat by the window, ate slowly, rushing nowhere, watching cars crawl along the highway. Inside, it was surprisingly calm. No, I wasn't taking revenge on anyone in the sense usually understood, to hurt them back. I was just quietly arranging pieces on the board so I could finally stop being a pawn. The plan was already in motion, and neither Marcus, nor Tiffany, nor even Otis suspected it yet. New Year's Eve came and went. The holidays were approaching their climax, the big Christmas dinner. By this moment, everything was already done. The trust was formed. The house included in it, so without my consent, it couldn't be sold. No one could re-register it. Documents for the sale of my share of the store were almost ready. The lawyer had already spoken with Lamar and Patrice, scheduled a meeting. Bank accounts were in the process of transferring to where Otis had no access. They thought I was still that same convenient woman who wouldn't go anywhere. But I already held the keys to the life they considered theirs in my hands. The Christmas dinner itself was, in essence, a play. Tiffany rushed around the house, commanding the caterers, servers, running with decorations, white, gold, everything like in a magazine. Otis went to pick up her parents at the hotel in the morning. Marcus played the host. Calls to someone, checks if everything was according to plan. I went upstairs early and walked through the house. It was like a picture. Shiny floors, perfect pillows, huge white and gold tree in the living room, garlands, candles. And not a single thing of mine. Not one photograph where Otis and I are young in our first store. Not a snapshot where I'm holding Keisha or newborn Marcus. On the walls, their wedding, her family at some resorts. Professional posed shots. As if I hadn't lived in this house all this time. There were many guests, mostly her people. Parents, sister with husband, friends from their club, a couple of Otis's relatives. Alara, Tiffany smiled at me with her perfect smile. You stay in the kitchen for now, okay? We want to take family photos by the tree first. It's easier when there are fewer people in the shot. I nodded and remained in the kitchen doorway. Watched them line up in front of the tree. Otis next to Marcus, Tiffany with the baby in her arms, her parents on the sides. They took a dozen shots, changed places, laughed. It didn't even occur to anyone to say, let's take one with Alara too. Then I looked into the dining room. Long table, crystal, china, napkins folded into intricate shapes, 20 settings, and at each a card with a name. I saw Grandpa, Grandma, her parents by last name, Aunt Lena, Sergio, Marcus, Tiffany. My card wasn't there. Instead, on the buffet lay a plastic badge on a lanyard. Housekeeper. I looked at it and thought, right now, you are signing your own verdict. Then everything went as you already heard. Tiffany loudly, so everyone could hear, hung the badge on my sweater. So no one gets confused, or they'll decide you're staff, and a short giggle. Marcus at the table. 10 settings, 9 chairs. His phrase about dinner is for family. Otis looking at his plate. I had twisted the ring on my finger since morning so it would come off easily. I knew the final point would come anyway. I just didn't know at what exact minute. I placed the tray in front of Marcus, took off the ring, placed it before him on the white tablecloth, and calmly said, "You just lost everything," and then took off the badge, placed it next to it, and left. No screaming, no tears. I drove to that motel on the highway, not from Zero. That's where I had sat in the diner a few days ago after the meeting with the lawyer, thinking how to turn everything. I didn't know then that I would sleep there. Turns out I knew, I just didn't admit it to myself. The morning after the holiday, I woke up on that same hard bed, already without illusions. I washed up, dressed, drank disgusting instant coffee in the lobby, and instead of driving home to the gated community, turned on the highway toward the city. I needed to go to one place. Our first store, the one where it all started. Narrow facade on an old street, worn sign, Vance Hardware and Supply. Crooked glass doors, creaky floor. Not the new pavilion in the next town, not the warehouse. Let the eyes go there later. I needed this one, the native one. I opened the door with my key, took a breath. The smell hit my nose. Wood, paint, a bit of oil, cardboard. My work. I walked slowly along the shelves, ran my hand over boxes of screws, over hooks, over cans of paint. Every meter of this space was paid for with our nerves. A couple of minutes later, the bell above the entrance rang. I turned automatically. Lamar appeared on the threshold, as always a bit early for his shift, with a cardboard cup of coffee. "Miss Ilara?" He stopped. "I thought you'd be with family." "Everything's fine. Plans changed," I answered. He looked closely, stayed silent, and just nodded. "If you need anything, say the word." "We'll need to talk seriously soon, you and Patrice," I said. "But not now." "Okay," he answered simply, and went to the back. I went into the small room we called the office. There stood an old desk, a battered filing cabinet, and a coffee maker that always sputtered, but still worked. I started the coffee, sat at the desk, spread the folder I had taken from the lawyer yesterday before me. Sun hit the window, illuminating dust in the air. Inside was silence. No one really came in yet, just preparation for the day. I sat and waited. Not an hour passed before the bell rang again, this time so the glass shook. Booming steps, fast, heavy. Otis appeared in the office doorway. He was still wearing yesterday's shirt, slightly wrinkled, face red, lips pressed together. "What was that yesterday?" Not even a hello. "Do you understand how you embarrassed us?" "Good morning, Otis," I said calmly. "Not a good morning," he waved off. "Tiffany was calling me all night. Her parents are in shock. Marcus doesn't know what to tell people. You staged a circus." "Circus?" I asked back. "Over some stupid badge," he continued. "You took and left the table in front of people. On a holiday. You shamed us." I looked at him for a while, then nodded at the chair opposite. "Sit," I said. "We need to talk." "I can stand," he grumbled. "Sit, Otis," I repeated. Something in my voice, probably, was such that he wasn't used to. He sat. I opened the folder and placed the first document before him. "What is this?" He frowned. "A trust," I answered. "The house we live in is now included in it and legally secured to me. All decisions regarding it go only through me. Neither you, nor Marcus, nor Tiffany can transfer it, mortgage it, or sign it away without my consent." Otis scanned it, hesitated. "Why all these complications?" he asked. "We're family." I didn't answer. Placed the next packet of papers. "This is an intent to sell my share of the store to Lamar, Patrice, and 2 other old employees," I said. "On installment terms, manageable payments. By spring, everything will be finalized." "You're selling the store?" His voice broke. "Our store? Without me?" "I am selling mine," I said calmly. "My half. I can do what I deem necessary with mine. You will do with yours what you want. Give it to Marcus. Burn it. Leave it to someone. That's your business. But my part will go to the people who really hold this store up." He stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. "You can't do that," he squeezed out. "Already did," I answered. I placed the third document. "This is the contract with the realtor," I said. "The house in Lake Forest goes on sale on the 10th. After paying off the mortgage, everything that remains, we split 50-50. "Have you lost your mind?" he whispered. "Where will Marcus and Tiffany live? The grandson?" "Where they can afford," I answered. "Just like you and I once lived in a rental above a garage and didn't die." He ran a hand over his face. "Is all this because of yesterday?" he asked. "Because of that stupid joke with the badge?" "No," I said quietly. "Yesterday is just the period. The reason is the last few years." "What years?" "The years when you made me sell our old house and move into the guest suite in the house I bought, as if doing me a favor. The years when your daughter-in-law called me like staff only free on the phone. The years when you gave Marcus papers for the store behind my back and said I was being too dramatic. When you sat at the table while I was officially listed as a housekeeper and didn't even lift your head." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I just wanted to support the son," he muttered. "Give him an opportunity." "I understood." I nodded. "Just while you were busy being a good father, you stopped being a husband." He turned to the window. "We can fix everything," he said after a pause. "We'll talk to them, set boundaries. You come back home." "I already came home, Otis," I said softly, and nodded at the walls of the store. "Here it is. Everything else is their decorations." He didn't answer. I took out one more sheet, a printout of a listing. A small house near the ocean, down in South Carolina, near Myrtle Beach. 2 stories, small yard, 10 minutes to the water. "And this is where I'm moving," I said. "House isn't new, no frills but mine. I already arranged a long-term lease, and later maybe I'll buy it." Otis took the sheet, read it. "You serious?" "Absolutely," I said. "End of January, I moved there." He raised his eyes to me, confused, tired. "And me?" he asked. "And you will choose yourself," I answered. "You can stay with Marcus and Tiffany, help them live nearby. You can come with me, start a normal quiet life by the ocean without these endless games of status." He was silent. "But I won't live where I'm considered service staff," I continued. "I won't sit in a guest suite while the table is set for family only. I won't pour strength into where I'm not seen." "Alara," he began. "Don't right now, Otis," I interrupted. "You pretended for a very long time not to notice how I was being pushed out. Now that starts having consequences." I stood up, took my bag. "I'm not returning to that house," I said. "I'll live in the motel until the beach house is free. If you want to talk, you know where to find me." "You're really leaving?" he asked quietly. "I already left, Otis," I answered. "Yesterday, when I took off the ring and put it on the table." He remained sitting at the desk. Before him lay the papers: trust, store sale conditions, realtor contract, listing for the house by the sea. All those sheets where in black and white it was written, "The life he was used to is already bursting at the seams." I walked out of the office, past the shelves where it still smelled of paint and wood, and felt something click inside me. Not painful, final. Behind my back sat a man who had to truly decide, for the first time in many years, whom he chooses. And for the first time in a long time, I understood. My life no longer depends on his choice. Processing the sale of the store took 2 weeks. Mr. Sterling ran around with papers, called, coordinated. I came to sign, verify, ask questions. Everything went calmly, without noise, neatly. One cold January day we all gathered in his office. Lamar came first in a shirt I hadn't seen on him before. It was clear he bought it specifically for the event. Behind him, Patrice, hands shaking, clutching her purse as if someone might take it away. Then 2 more of our old employees, with whom we survived the zeros and the crises and empty shelves together. "You sure you didn't change your mind? For the 3rd time this week?" Lamar asked. "Lamar, if I doubted, we wouldn't be sitting here," I answered. We signed for a long time. Initials here, signature here, date here. Mr. Sterling patiently explained every page, though I understood anyway. But it was important to me that Lamar and Patrice heard everything too. When we finished, Patrice couldn't hold back. Right in the middle of this strict table piled with papers, tears flowed. "I don't even know how to say thank you," she exhaled. "We never thought we could have something like this." "You've had it for a long time," I said. "Just now it's visible not only in fact, but by documents." Lamar stood up, extended a hand, shook mine firmly. "We won't let you down." "I know," I answered. "You haven't let me down for 20 years. When I walked out of the office, the air on the street seemed especially sharp. I walked to the car and for the first time in a long time felt not fatigue, but a certain lightness, as if a heavy sack was taken off my shoulders, and then a familiar black SUV screeched to a halt in the lot. Out of it, slamming the door, jumped Marcus, face red, breathing ragged, phone in hand. "Ma, what the—" He even searched for a word. "What did you do?" I stopped next to my old car. "Good afternoon, Marcus," I said. "You sold the store?" he spat out. "Were you going to ask me at all?" "I sold my part," I answered calmly. "Mine. Not ours, not yours. My half." "It was supposed to go to me," he almost yelled. "It's a family business. I'm your son." "And?" I asked. "You showed up there a couple of times a week for photos and stories. That is not called running a business." He jerked his shoulder, turned away, then back to me. "You could have waited. We said I would gradually enter, build a strategy." "Marcus," I interrupted, "let's be honest. You didn't want the store. You wanted the image. I am the heir, owner of a chain, son of founders. But the simple ugly part, getting up at 6, unloading a truck with goods, arguing with suppliers, counting every dollar, never interested you." He grimaced but didn't object. "This is because Tiffany hung that badge on you then," he hissed. "Because of one stupid joke you are destroying everything we built." "It is because you sat and stayed silent," I said. "Because for 3 years you watched your wife make a free servant out of me and it suited you just fine. Because you told me dinner is for family and didn't even understand that in that moment you crossed me out of that very family." He looked away. For a second, something resembling shame flashed on his face, but immediately hid behind irritation. "Okay, the store," he exhaled. "But the house. You definitely don't have the right to touch the house. That is our home. We have a child there." "The house goes on the market next week," I answered. "The realtor is already busy." He jerked as if hit. "You can't do that. We live there." "I can," I said. "It is my property. You lived there at my expense. The time for that fairy tale is ending." "And where will we go?" He almost broke. To a rental? To Tiffany's parents? Wherever adults go, I interrupted, you'll find an option within your income. Just like your father and I once lived in a box above a garage. He looked at me, gripping the phone so his knuckles turned white. You are just taking revenge, he squeezed out, so it hurts us as much as you. If I were taking revenge, I said quietly, I would make it so you lost everything without chances. I am simply taking back mine and giving it to those who are worthy, and you get a chance to finally grow up. I got in the car, started the engine. Through the glass, I saw him standing in the middle of the parking lot, seemingly a grown man. But the expression on his face was that of an offended teenager who was told no for the first time. I drove out of the lot without looking back. In the motel, in my cheap room with floral curtains and a stain on the ceiling, I only managed to take off my coat when the phone jumped on the nightstand, Tiffany on the screen. I sighed and answered. "How could you?" she screamed immediately, without a hello. "What is this nonsense? Marcus says you sold the store and are going to sell the house. That is our house. We built a life there." "It is my house," I said calmly. "I bought it. You lived in it. Now it will be sold." "We invested in renovations, in furniture, in the yard," she squealed. "Almost everything." "I see, I can," I said. "And by the way, all renovations and furniture were paid from my account. So your investments are tastes and choice of wallpaper." A heavy pause hung on the other end. "And the baby?" She broke again. "Do you think about the grandson at all? You want him to bounce around rentals?" "The grandson is the only one I thought about in advance," I said. "An educational fund is already registered in his name. College, if he wants anywhere. The money is already there. Neither you nor Marcus can touch those funds." Silence again, this time longer. "You thought of everything, huh?" Her voice became colder. "Just such a perfect revenge plan." "It's not revenge, Tiffany," I answered. "Revenge is when the goal is to make a person feel bad. I simply stopped allowing you to make me feel bad. I am taking back mine and redistributing it as I deem necessary. You lose what you considered yours by default, but you never earned it." "Marcus's father will never allow you to do this," she hissed. "Otis won't permit it." "Otis already permitted it," I said. "He was the first to decide to sign papers behind my back. Just now I am signing the consequences." She exhaled noisily. "You will destroy the family," she said. "You started destroying the family the day you hung a housekeeper badge on me," I answered. "I just stopped sitting in the kitchen watching you do it." The phone clicked. She disconnected. I put the phone on the nightstand, sat on the edge of the bed. The room smelled of cheap air freshener. Behind the wall, someone was watching TV loudly. Steps shuffled down the hall. I looked at the dark screen of the phone. No call from Otis, nor from Keisha. Only this hysteria and the dumb pause after. I lay down on top of the bedspread, closed my eyes, and suddenly felt very clearly. Everything real is only beginning. They thought I'd just slammed the door in emotion and would return in a couple of days to make up, as always. But actually, I had just shifted the bricks in the very foundation of their habitual life, and very soon the house they sat in so confidently would start cracking at the seams. By the end of January, everything fell into place, like in a ledger after closing the month. The house they considered theirs stood in listings for barely any time. The realtor called me and said there were 3 offers, one better than the other. I looked at the numbers, estimated how much would remain after paying off the mortgage, and calmly said, "We take the highest one." A day later, Marcus and Tiffany received an official letter. "Deal approved. You have 60 days to pack things and vacate the house. 60 days to understand that what seemed like a guarantee for life actually never belonged to them." The store also officially changed owners. We set the date, February 1st. On that day, I arrived at the old pavilion early, walked through the aisles, touched the cool metal of the shelves, listened to the floor creak in the passage to the warehouse, then gave the keys to Lamar and Patrice. "Now it's yours," I said. "You'll handle it." They nodded, almost crying, repeating, "Thank you, Ms. Ilara. We won't let you down." And I felt not sadness, but a quiet relief. I put a period where others decided to put my signature without asking. Otis never went to the coast. He stayed in Chicago, rented a one-bedroom apartment not far from the new store location, tried to maneuver between his son and me until he realized that sitting on two chairs is exactly that series where in the end you are left without a chair at all. Sometimes he called. "Maybe we think about how to return everything," he asked cautiously. "Nothing to return, Otis," I answered. "I abandoned no one. I just stepped out of the role I was written into without permission." Our conversations were polite but short. Somewhere inside me, probably, a warm thread still remained for him. 40 years together don't get erased by one scandal. But returning to where only a guest suite and a badge are prepared for you again, that is no longer about love. That is about habit. And I decided that at 70, it's time to change habits. A year later, on the next Christmas morning, I stood in my small kitchen in the cottage by the sea in South Carolina and mixed salad in a big bowl. Regular salad, greens, tomatoes, cucumber, no tartare of anything, and sauce of pumpkin puree. Just food that people eat at a living table, not for photos. My house is small. 2 bedrooms, a crooked fence, floorboards that honestly creak when you walk for water at night. Windows sometimes stick. The fridge hums like an old bus, and wallpaper in the hallway is peeling in the corner. And you know what? I love this house to the last seam. The table was set for 8 people. Chairs from wherever. 1 bought on Craigslist, 2 dragged over by a neighbor. 1 actually once stood in a church hall. The tablecloth old but clean. Plates, each with its own pattern. Not a single full set. Napkins half from the store, half ones I embroidered myself in the evenings when the ocean roars outside the window and I have nowhere to rush. First came Mrs. Higgins from the neighboring lot, dry, quick, in a bright scarf and with a casserole in her hands. "Well, hostess," she says, putting the dish on the table, "let's check if yours is edible today or if everyone will be saved by my cooking again." After her, Marianne pulled up, a retired teacher from across the street with 2 pies, apple and pecan. Then came the girls from the local diner, where I sometimes have breakfast, both young, with backpacks. Waitresses working shifts, living in a rented room, not getting to their families all winter. "We feel at home with you," they say every time. "Smells normal here. Smells human." And finally, a familiar minivan braked under the windows. Keisha arrived with her husband and kids. Sand from their shoes flew everywhere. The children burst into the house like a whirlwind, as always. "Gran, is this really all yours?" asked the youngest granddaughter, turning her head around. I sat down next to her. "Mine," I said. "Well, do you like it?" She carefully looked at the slightly crooked ceiling, the tree in the corner decorated with ornaments from the market, and a couple of old balls I had secretly taken from that big house, already empty. Looked at the mismatched chairs, at paper snowflakes we cut out with neighborhood kids. "It's fun here," she said seriously. "Like the house is smiling." My eyes stung, but I stopped crying a long time ago. Just nodded. "That's excellent. Means I'm doing everything right." We sat at this strange, shabby table, ate what we managed to cook and bring, interrupted each other, laughed loudly. No one arranged anyone by status. No one thought about how it would look in stories. No one curled their lip at someone else's food. Kids argued over a board game. Mrs. Higgins commented loudly. Marianne recalled how stubborn Keisha was in school. Living noise, living house, living me. After dinner, when everyone moved to the living room, some to the TV, some to the kids, some to tea, Keisha came to me in the kitchen. I was just washing dishes. "Ma," she began quietly, drying a plate with a towel. "Marcus called me recently." I didn't flinch. Over this year, I learned not to twitch at his name. "So?" I asked calmly. "Asked how you are, but like, in circles. Said plainly what he wants. I feel he's uneasy. They're renting a house now, somewhere closer to her parents. Says it's hard. He seems to really miss the store. Those people. the atmosphere. And you, Ma. I put the plate in the rack, leaned my back against the cabinet. I don't wish him evil, I said. Let him live, learn. Just now, lessons for him are at his expense, not mine. Keisha was silent, then asked quietly, if he asks for forgiveness truly, will you talk to him? I thought. Before my eyes for a second floated that dining room, the long table, the badge on my chest, and his face when he said, dinner is for family. Then his face in the parking lot, red with anger, when he shouted that I should have given him the store. Maybe, I answered honestly. If he can ever say directly, Ma, I was wrong. I didn't see you. I forgot who built all this. If he says it himself, not because he's pressed, not because Tiffany persuades him, then maybe we'll talk. And if not? She asked. And if not? I shrugged. I am not alone anyway. I have you, I have my grandkids, I have this house, the ocean, my neighbors, and mainly, I have me. Keisha put her palm on my hand. You've become different, she said. Lighter somehow, like a stone off your soul. That's how it is, I chuckled. When you stop carrying grown adults who know how to walk themselves, your back hurts less. When everyone left, the house finally quieted down. The ocean hummed hollowly outside the window. Dishes were washed, pies eaten halfway. Only tangerines and the teapot remained on the table. I walked to a small shelf by the front door. There stood 3 frames. In one, a photo of my grandkids on the beach, all sandy, funny, and happy. In the second, an old snapshot. I am very young, Otis, and the sign Vance Hardware and Supply on the first store. And in the third frame, that very badge. Housekeeper. I took it when that big house was already empty, and the realtor was showing it to strangers. The badge was lying in a drawer with some receipts and broken pens. I could have thrown it away, but I didn't. Because this is not a reminder of shame. This is a reminder of the day when I finally remembered who I am and stepped over other people's labels. I ran a finger over the glass of the frame and quietly said to myself, they wanted to give me a piece of plastic instead of a place at the table, wanted me to remain a convenient shadow in a stranger's house, and forgot that the floor under their expensive chairs is me. If you are listening to this story now and catching yourself recognizing yourself in a kitchen behind a wall while your own people sit at the table without you, in jokes of, it's okay, you're made of iron, in endless do please that have long not been requests but duties, remember one thing. You are not service staff if you didn't agree to it yourself. You are not required to wear a badge that your own family hangs on you. You have the right to stand up from the table where there was no chair for you, and go where you are the mistress of your life, even if there is a crooked fence, an old fridge, and mismatched dishes. Your time, your money, your health, your years, these are not small change for someone else's convenience. And when you finally stand up and say, enough, the sound of that chair being pushed back from the table is louder than any applause from the crowd. If this story suggested something to you, leave a reaction. Share this tale with someone who is long overdue to take off someone else's badge and return their name to themselves. I now belong only to myself. You know, this is the best inheritance I could leave both to myself and to those who truly know how to appreciate it. If you liked my story and want to hear more, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support me, you can do it through Super Thanks. It would mean a lot. In the comments, tell me which city you're watching from and what time it is, so I can see how far my story reaches. I've added 2 more life stories on the screen just for you. Click one now and let's keep spending time together. Much love. See you soon.